Hi, I'm Vince Molinari, and welcome to the Nest Summit, part of Climate Week New York City. I am thrilled to invite our guest on today, Dr. Manuel Pinuela, who is a technology and science entrepreneur. What a combination. Manuel, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vince. Delighted to be here.
So you're the founder and CEO of Cultivo. Tell us a bit about Cultivo and what you're doing. And I've got to tell you, you had me right at the onset. You had me at hello with Invest in Nature. So you have everybody's attention. Take it away.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Vince. Well, Cultivo is here to unlock investment in nature at scale. And we basically do that by unlocking land and therefore then unlocking investment into nature. And we do that by throwing technology at a very difficult problem, figuring out what is the natural capital that's, for example, an tract of land, figuring out if we can actually make that tract of land, that ecosystem bounce back, and then figure out what are the yields that tract of land would bring, for example, on carbon capture, water capture, very importantly, biodiversity, natural infrastructure, and job creation. That we then package into what we call a nature generator that is primarily an investment product that allows investors to therefore very succinctly and knowing all the risks and all the upsides, what the opportunity on investing in nature could look like.
So you're really going to core of looking at regeneration, I would say, and this intersection of technology. How do we look or birth, if you would, untapped resources or new ways to look at resources of land? Am I correct about that?
Yeah, spot on. In fact, it's all about that. The level of land degradation around the planet is 75% at least. We've lost more than 1 million species. And of course, the direct impact on now our health, but also how habitable or inhabitable our planet is now very palpable. So yes, we're going straight to the core of those issues.
I love it. I love it. So, when we move the narrative and now the narrative to action of how do we become better stewards of our planet, the oneness of all of us on the planet, and how we have to self-heal or self-correct so that we have a more prosperous future. Why invest in nature? What's the takeaway? How do we think about that differently?
Well, the first thing is that it's a very attractive investment. The second part is that you have something that is very core to now not only financial institutions or corporations, but accredited investors and literally everyone out there on the street, where you want to have and know exactly where your money is going to. Knowing that it's going to nature is a massive bonus. Figuring out with data how your money is actually impacting ecosystems, species, basically nature is biodiversity is another way of saying nature. And more importantly, how you're also making sure that it's sustainable by creating jobs. So the fact that you have financial returns, natural returns, and social returns make it a very interesting investment asset.
So you've clearly moved way past the old narrative of this is a nice thing to do, we should feel good about doing. You've moved this front and center to being core of investment thesis, both for traditional financial returns, but those exponential returns in the return to nature.
Absolutely. And more importantly is that we're really unlocking the two sides of that market that you were just mentioning, right? There, the abundance of green finance and how it's just increasing, with many large funds. It's a race really right now, hundreds, tens and billions of dollars going into nature. But the challenge is finding high quality products that can allow me to, as an investor, to see the returns and basically balance those returns through carbon capture, water capture, and biodiversity. What we do is we have an unfair advantage. We have all the data for us and, of course, to our investors and our landowners to put all the data on the table to make that investment decision.
Well, going back to the data component, really the differentiator so that we can measure, understand what the outcomes are, what are the returns. So really intrigued, love what's going on with Cultivo. How do people invest through Cultivo?
It's quite simple. So thank you for that question. The way it works is you go to cultivo.land, and as an investor, we need to verify that you're, of course, an accredited investor and that you know that your money is at risk. And the main backbone of all the investments is that we have this special purpose vehicles called the nature generators, where you would have in the platform all the information that you need to do your due diligence, your analysis, and it's as simple as transferring and agreeing to our investment terms and transferring your money to those projects. So it can go from grasslands. So let me tell you a bit more about how those investment products look. It can be from grasslands, it can be forests, and it can be wetlands such as mangroves. And that's across the globe.
So it is a globalized asset class that you're looking at.
Yes. In fact, we have 3 sites to manage the globe. We have offices in California, Mexico City for Latin America and the Caribbean, and in London for covering the UK, Europe, and Africa.
I know you mentioned accredited investors there a moment ago. Do you have a typical prototype of who invests through Cultivo? Is it accredited, institutional? Is it a wide swath?
It's quite wide. We focus a lot currently in financial institutions and corporates that are going beyond just being an off-taker. They're figuring out this is a profit center for them, and therefore they're investing directly onto the projects. But also, I love the fact that you asked for accredited investors, because there is a huge part of the population, especially driven by millennials, that have those characteristics that I mentioned, that they want to know exactly where their money is going to, and then it's very aligned to their core values. And those core values tend to be nature and livelihood improvement.
Well, we're certainly thrilled with the recent SEC action to expand the definition of accredited investor to open a wider swath of potential investors. So I could see where that creates a bit more momentum for what Cultivo is doing. I'd love to talk about the returns, right? When you define the returns at Cultivo, are you looking, certainly what seems to be, as you indicated, great financial returns, but are you creating metrics or measuring the outcomes that are perhaps historically not thought of in terms of rate of returns, the amount of carbon reduction, the amount of regeneration, and so forth?
Yeah, so let me start with the first one. So from a financial perspective, we put the lens that any investor would look at. We look at IRRs. As an example, one of our grasslands project has of course, with all the risks, has an implicit IRR of more than 20%, multiple on investment capital of more than 3x in 5 years. But when you then look at the other component that's driving that value, which is nature. So think about the amount of captured carbon that comes from that grassland. And the price of how that is increasing with a market that just with a task force led by Mark Carney is expected to grow 160 times. It's amazing news. The same thing happens so carbon is intangible, very tangible happens with water. So we have a lot of investors that are completely focused on water, a market that's more than $1 trillion. And then the biodiversity component. So we use technology not only to measure carbon, to measure water, to measure biodiversity. So each project that an investor goes for would have a very specific set of species that are being protected and tracked. For a market that is more now than there's a gap on this investment market. This is why it's such a great opportunity of more than 700 billion. And then you have a component on the social part. So on the social part, you have livelihood improvement, primarily through job creation and the cascade that creates in a community. All investors in Cultivo would know we're not displacing people, especially when you're looking between the tropics. And so we are very specific into also tracking that against the UN's SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals.
Well, you bring up an amazing point with the SDGs and kind of the awareness of climate risk, the demand side for investable product that align with people's purpose and core beliefs. Are you seeing the same phenomenon? Are you working with corporations as well here?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, on their sustainability reports, they love the fact that in the platform, on the on-day and dynamic way we're providing reports and basically taking the pulse of all the nature generators, all the projects. They already have all the information that they need for their sustainable reports that, as you know, have evolved quite a lot to be very specific on the SDGs, very specific on how they're mitigating their emissions. And we're really proud of working with corporations that really do everything that they can to mitigate and to avoid those emissions, basically to decarbonize. And they're using the offsets just towards the last part, that there is not enough technology or it's very difficult to offset.
Terrific. Manuel, as we close out here, how do folks find out more about the new term that I learned today, nature generators, what Cultivo is doing? How do they learn more?
So first and foremost, please go to our website, cultivo.land. There's more and more channels that we will be opening, but follow us there or on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the terrific work that you're putting forward.
Thank you, Vince. It's been a pleasure.
All ours.